Hello, my lovely people, and welcome to Owen's Mind, a light-hearted trip through the contents of my head and the world in general. It is Sunday the 2nd of February. My name is Owen. Here is what is on my mind today. So, as usual, I've picked out 5 stories making the headlines, what to give my thoughts on. Links will be in the description below so you can read each article in full and show those original publications some love. So without any further ado, let's get straight into it with story number 1. Story number 1 today comes to us from Sky News. It's just a horrible story. This Happy Brexit Day poster telling people to speak English has been reported to the police. So yeah, this happened in Norwich, in a place, Winchester Town in Norwich. 15 floors, block of flats. Every fire door in this place had this poster stuck on it. Happy Brexit Day poster. Okay, I'm going to read it in full. Okay, so you can see just how horrible it is, and I'll have a little chat about it. So yes. Happy Brexit Day. As we finally have our great country back, we feel there is one rule that needs to be made clear to Winchester Tower residents. We do not tolerate people speaking other languages than English in the flats. We are now our own country again, and the Queen's English is the spoken tongue here. If you do want to speak whatever is the mother tongue of the country you came from, then we suggest you return to that place and return your flat to the council so they can let British people live here, and we can return to what was normality before you infected this once great island. It's a simple choice: obey the rule of the majority or leave. You won't have long till our government will implement rules that will put Britain first. That will put British first. Okay, so the grammar's terrible. So best evolve or leave. God save the Queen, her government, and all true patriots. So, yes, just hateful, racist garbage. So, rightfully so, this has been reported to the police. Norwich City Council posted on Twitter on Saturday. You may have seen a photo of a poster that has appeared in one of our properties. Norwich has a proud history of being a welcoming city and will not tolerate this behaviour. As soon as we became aware of this incident, we reported it to the Norfolk Police and are investigating. We take this very seriously and encourage residents to contact the police if they have any concerns. The signs were removed by a caretaker. Mike Stonard, a cabinet member on Norwich City Council, told the Eastern Daily Press, "I absolutely condemn this abhorrent poster. Whoever put it there has committed a hate crime. It is as simple as that." Many people voted for Brexit for a range of different reasons. However, I am sure not many of them will condone this kind of thing. Yeah, so this was always going to be a slight side effect of Brexit, and hopefully it's going to be a very, 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 very minimal part of it, but a lot of people, sorry about that, a lot of kind of moderate people, whether you vote for Brexit or against it. I didn't vote because I didn't feel either side gave enough information. There was too much misinformation, so I didn't have a very clear idea of what the consequences of leaving or staying were, or the benefits of remaining or leaving were. So I just didn't vote on it because I didn't feel I had all the information, so I don't have any right to complain about the result. So we left, okay. But then there was a lot of people during the Leave campaign, not officially, but were going, oh yeah, it gets rid of all the immigrants, and it gets rid of this, and it gets Britain back, and it's all this. It's like, Britain has always been, when Britain was just Britain, it has always been inclusive to a degree. We are built on welcoming people from all communities and this kind of thing. You look at pictures back from of regiments in World War II fighting to protect this nation, this island, and you had people from all over. We had Polish regiments, we had Sikh regiments, and all kinds of things. We had people who were fighting to defend our nation. And this wasn't their home country. They'd come here, we'd welcome them in, and they were going to fight and die to protect us. And now, all these years later, so it's not like, now that we're out of the European Union, it's not kind of resetting a clock and going back to where we were before. Because where we were before was inclusive. It's just ridiculous. And again, I know racism's a thing, and it's an idiotic thing, and yeah, and it's always been around, but this kind of thing is like, that's not just a, go home, we don't want you here. which is horrible in itself. But that's very threatening. That is an incredibly threatening tone to that. And if you're in that block of flats, and if you've got young kids, and if one of your young kids came home from school and read that on a door where you live, that'd be terrifying for anybody, for an elderly couple in that block of flats. It's just horrendous. And anyway, hopefully they'll figure out. You're guessing it's another resident, isn't it? Because blocks of flats tend to have key code entry for people who live there, so strangers can't come in. So it's going to be somebody in the building. And yeah, hopefully it'll be they'll be appropriately dealt with. But just for anybody watching this, as a British guy myself, I don't tolerate that kind of thing. As far as I'm concerned, this country is. Many of the great things about Great Britain is the fact that we are inclusive and we pull in from other cultures and they add to us, and they increase the quality of life. They don't decrease, they don't diminish. My life is not diminished from having different, ethnic backgrounds in the country. It's increased because you get different culture, you get different music, you get different foods, you get different perspectives. I don't need to explain to you why racism is bad, let's face it. But, just a horrible thing. Hopefully it's an isolated incident. And we can deal with it and move on. Anyway, so that's it. Heavy one to start with. Let's move on to story number 2. A bit of a palate cleanser, maybe. This gin is made with elephant dung, and there's a good reason. So, yes, on CNN Business today. Following a holiday to a game reserve a couple of years ago, Paula Ansley was inspired to ask her husband Les a rather unusual question. Would it be possible to make gin using elephant dung? Now, the thing is, a game ranger explained to them how elephants are particular about the food they eat and they forage, and they absorb less than half of what they eat. So much of their diet of plants remains in their dung. A lot of the nutrients and the kind of the interesting flavours and things pass through them. Les, a South African, had moved to the UK years earlier, where he met Paula. Both worked as professors in different fields of biology, but after leaving academia, they hatched a plan to move to South Africa and start a business that could contribute to conservation and give back to the community. So, after the visit to the game reserve, Paul, a gin lover, reasoned why not let elephants do the hard work of kind of collecting all these, doing all the foraging, collecting all these ingredients together, and then when it passes through them, essentially you get a package with it all in. So they said, why not create? So they created in 2018 Ndlovu gin infused with botanicals foraged by elephants, sourced from their dung. So they contacted Botley Scott Game Reserve in the Western Cape and said, "Do you think you could send us some elephant dung?" They said yes. So they sent us some dung and they started looking at how to prepare it. So it goes through drying and sanitation. It's rinsed and dried again and makes it entirely safe to drink. The final product is then infused into the gin, and each bottle you buy is marked with the GPS coordinates of where the dung was found and the date it was collected, and you can see if it's the winter in Kruger or summer in Botley Scott, and it's an additional story. Does it affect the gin? Apparently it's got an earthy, grassy type flavour, said Ansley. Depending on where you collect the botanicals or which elephant we collect the botanicals from, the gin flavour is going to change slightly. As well as including classic gin flavours like juniper and coriander, Ndlovu gin takes its taste from the extract of elephants' diet of roots, grasses, fruits and bark, including aloe and acacia. Since its first batch in November last year, South African companies produced 6,000 litres and now exports to Europe and other African countries. Okay, this is a good bit. Recommends a retail price of $34 and donates 15% of its profits to the Africa Foundation to support the conservation of elephants. Obviously, reaction has been mixed because it's this, that, and the other. It's dung, but apparently customers are pleasantly surprised. And they said, Les and Ansley said, we were very aware that we were making a gin from dung. We have to make good gin, otherwise it's only ever going to be a gimmick. So, yeah, so it's interesting, I suppose. Yeah, they let the elephant kind of gather all these things, and I suppose it gets fermented going through the body, so maybe that helps, I don't know. And then they extract it, dry it, make it safe for human consumption, add it to their gin for this kind of flavour, and it is a bit of a gimmick, isn't it? Let's face it, it is gimmicky. But, and it's not, there is precedent for this. There's that coffee, I think it's called Kopi Luwak, don't quote me on that, and that's passed through the tract of a certain animal, these coffee beans, and it kind of extracts something from the coffee. The digestive enzymes in this creature kind of pull something out of the coffee beans that you can't do in a lab, or it's harder to do in the lab. And then they ferment that, and you get this amazing, very expensive coffee that's passed through an animal before. So yeah, I suppose, and the fact that they kind of give something back to look after the elephants, so they're kind of helping, essentially giving 15% back to help protect what is essentially some of their workforce, because the elephants are essentially part of the process. You can't do it without them. You can't make this particular gin without them. Would I try it? Yeah, I probably would. Just because I like gin, it'd be interesting to see. It's not unless it was exceptional. I don't think I'd kind of stay married to the brand just because of it, because it does strike me as a little bit gimmicky. Is it really that much harder to kind of gather these ingredients by hand? Because the dung, it's got whatever the elephant has eaten, half of it gets through, so half of it's been digested. So you only get half as much from the dung as you would from going out and collecting it. But I don't know how much territory each elephant covers. So if they cover a vast area and they're trying all these different things, then maybe it is more cost effective to do this. If they're essentially the gathering part of your process, and then you just take their leavings and clean it and strain it and dry it and everything. So yeah, there we go. Yeah, I'd give it a try. Would you give it a try? I might ask that as a question at the end. Anyway, let's move on. Story number 3. Mail online. So, who are you calling fat? Rescuers nicknamed the owl Plump after she was scoffed so many mice and voles she was too heavy to fly. A little cute story just to kind of take the edge off that first one. Yes, so an owl has been nicknamed Plump. She was found in a ditch by a member of the public who thought she was injured, but staff at a Suffolk Owl Sanctuary examined her. They found she was just extremely obese. She weighed 245 grams on admission to the sanctuary, which is a third heavier than a large, healthy female little owl. But she lost 30 to 40 grams on a 2-week controlled diet and has been released back into the wild. Fantastic. So she was named Plump, which is kind of fat shaming. Yeah, it was in the sanctuary in Stonham, Aspel. It was released back into the wild on Sunday. Yeah, Head falcon and rufous samkin attributed Plump's weight gain to a very high number of prey in the area where she was found, Saxmundum, and a mild winter. He said, "This is the first time I've had this. It's quite unusual, but after Christmas we can all relate. It is also so unusual for wild birds to get into this condition naturally. So staff conducted an experiment to make sure she was not an escaped pet." I like this. This is clever. There was no indication of rings or chip identification, and local inquiries did not give any answers. So, the sanctuary observed Plump's familiarity with common foods used in aviaries, such as bright yellow chicks, which are not often found naturally in English countryside, which are a telltale sign of life in captivity. Plump readily took to more wild-type foods, such as dark mice. So staff said they were confident it's likely to be an unusual case of natural obesity. So they gave her the choice of these little dark mice, things she would find if she was a wild owl, and these bright yellow chicks, which is the kind of things that aviaries get pre-packed. If you go to a pet store now and you go to like the reptile section, you get live creatures and things, and mice, and these little bright yellow chick kind of embryo things, which you would feed a captive bird. And so they offered her that, because if she was domesticated, she'd recognise that as food. Anyway, she shied away from that, so they're fairly confident that she's wild. Because obviously she's domesticated. If she's somebody's pet or from an aviary, you don't want to release it back into the wild because it might not be kind of used to surviving in that environment. So yeah, it says ordinarily if an owl is found in a ditch, sanctuary staff would expect it to be injured to prevent it from flying. Or sometimes they can get bogged down and get too wet and they become grounded. But just naturally obese in the wild is unusual because it's a hard life for wild birds. But apparently a mild winter and a good concentration of kind of what they'd eat, prey and small animals in this area had just led to this one just gorging itself and being grounded. So I suppose that's the equivalent of like your dad on Christmas Day having to undo the belt after dinner. He's like, I can't move. So, but yeah, she's healthy again. I don't know, lesson learned hopefully. But Plump is now not Plump, so you have to give it another name. Released back into the wild, hopefully to have a long, happy life. Anyway, move on. Story number 4. So this is National Geographic via Emerson News, and I literally, full disclosure, I put this in because it was a really unusual headline. Could Pablo Escobar's escaped hippos help the environment? Yeah, bizarre. So when notorious drug lord Pablo Escobar was shot dead in 1993, the Colombian government took control of his exploration. luxurious estate in northwestern Colombia, including his personal zoo. Most of the animals were shipped away, but 4 hippopotamuses, of which Eskimo was especially fond, were left to fend for themselves in a pond. But now there is dozens of them, and over a decade, the Colombian government has been pondering how best to curb the growing population. A strategy largely supported by conservation experts, but not everyone is on board. Without direct evidence that the animals are doing harm, some ecologists argue that there's no reason to cull or relocate them. Indeed, the hippos could fill in for species that humans have pushed to extinction thousands of years ago in an area known as rewilding. So this article has got loads of information, but the basic gist of it is a lot of people are saying, look, we need to kind of curb these because they're breeding out of control. And it says hippos at Eskimos' former ranch moved into Colombia's main river, spreading over the growing area. Nobody knows exactly how many they are, but estimates indicate there may be a total population between 80 and 100. It says within a couple of decades there could be thousands of them. So hippo is a big animal. And there's a bit of a kind of to and fro at the minute, because some people are going, look, they're going to take over, and they are a great big animal. They're going to kind of suppress natural animals, native animals, because they're just going to dominate them. And also they're quite dangerous. Hippos kill more people than crocodiles every year. They're a big animal, and despite their bulk, they move fast, and they can really do harm. But other people are saying no, they're gonna kind of fill in the gaps where other species have been missed out in this area. So it's a bit of a to and fro at the minute, but yeah, I just thought it was an interesting headline. And it does raise that kind of question about invasive species and this kind of thing, because New Zealand in particular has got very, very, very strict controls about what animals can kind of go into the country and what kind of flora and fauna are allowed in, because they've got a very, very delicate, balanced ecosystem, and just introducing one thing can absolutely devastate and have really long, far-reaching effects. So there's a little bit of that going on here. There was a famous Simpsons episode where they went to Australia and Bart took a bullfrog, and obviously it was played for comic effect, but it kind of showed, that because they had no natural predators and a good food source, they literally just took over the place. So yeah, it's a bit of a question at the minute. What's going to happen to all these hippos? They've tried to find some way. I think it says here somewhere they're trying to find some way to maybe make them chemically infertile or something like that. Like I say, there's loads of information in the article. Do read it. It is very interesting, but it's too much for me to put on here because I'll be talking for ages and ages, and you don't hear my voice for that long. So yeah, but there you go. Pablo Escobar. So he continues to damage the country, apparently, long after his death. Not through drugs anymore, but through hippos. Move on. Final story. Story number 5. This is in the sun. Chilly in the air. So Earth about to enter a 30-year mini ice age with minus 50-degree temperatures in the coldest regions, scientists warn. So yes, Earth could face frosty weather and biting snowstorms over the next 30 years as an ominous solar minimum grips the planet, scientists warn. Cold snap caused by the sun entering a natural hibernation threatened to trigger food shortages as temperatures slump across the planet. According to NASA, the sun will reach its lowest activity in over 200 years in 2020. This could cause average temperatures to drop as much as 1 degree in a cold spell lasting 12 months. Now, 1 degree doesn't sound like a lot, but it can be very, very significant. The sun is approaching a hibernation period. Professor Zarkova, who has published multiple scientific papers on solar minimums, told The Sun. Less sunspots will be formed on the solar surface, and thus less energy and radiation will be emitted towards the planets and the Earth. Solar minimums are part of the Sun's natural life cycle and occur once every 11 years. However, 2020's minimum promises to be a especially chilly one because it marks the start of a rare event known as a grand solar minimum, in which the energy emitted from the Sun drops even more than usual, and these occur about every 400 years. Most of the effects will be harmless. However, Professor Zarkova warned icy spells and wet summers could persist until solar activity picks up again in 2053. It's got 33 years of miserable wet summers. She listed recent unusual chills in Canada and Iceland as evidence of the grand solar minimum already taking hold. The reduction in temperatures will result in cold weathers on Earth, wet and cold summers, wet and cold winters, possibly get big frosts, as it's happening now in Canada, where they see temperatures of minus 50. But this is only the start of the grand solar minimum, and there is yet another, and there's more to come over the next 33 years. The last one to strike the Earth was the Maunder minimum, which lasted from 1645 to 1715. So that's like, what, 70 years? During this period, the brightness of the sun dropped and temperatures plummeted across the globe. So apparently we could find ourselves in the grips of a similar freeze by 2025, according to NASA. It says we can only hope that it will not be as severe as the Maunder minimum. Yeah. So the problem is, obviously, this is, it says in the article, we could lead to a food deficit for people and animals, as we've seen in the past couple of years when snow in Spain and Greece and May kind of demolished the veggie fields, and the UK has a deficit of broccoli and other fruits and veggies. So essentially, if it's colder, you can't grow as a wider variety of things. However, they've said they're not expecting it to be as bad because, ironically, because global warming is kind of a thing, it's going to kind of help this meet in the middle. So temperatures are going to fall due to this naturally occurring thing, but due to the man-made global warming, it's kind of going to offset it a little bit. So it says, thus there will probably be no detectable effect on global climate, but it is going to be a thing. So, yeah, just bizarre, isn't it? And my only concern with this is that if we do start getting cold temperatures, colder than usual, due to the fact this happens every 400 years. So we have recorded history before that, but not with the kind of data we're going to have now. So there's going to be measurable, this is colder than it's ever been in our recent history. If we get this grand solar minimum, if it does kick in to some degree where we get incredibly cold winters and cold temperatures across the planet, unseasonably cold in areas where it wouldn't normally be. My concern is that the kind of climate change deniers will try and jump on that as evidence that no, there is no global. Look how cold it is. How can there be global warming and all this stuff? You're like, such a reductive argument, but I can see it happening. I can already see it happening. And going, no, this is a natural thing. This happens anyway. This would have happened regardless of us being here. If we'd not existed, this still happens. So that's my concern with it. People are going to use this as an excuse to kind of decry global warming again. And, I can already see it. I guarantee, I'll put it in now, I can already guarantee it's going to happen. But, yeah, that's not the case. Global warming is a thing. We are doing it. It is going to be devastating and catastrophic if we don't do something about it. And I don't want this over the next 5 years, if temperatures do drop, for people to go, no, global warming is not a thing. Like, I feel how cold it is outside, so we can't be doing any harm to the planet. Like, yes, we are. Really are. Anyway, let's leave it at that. Drink water. So, that's it, guys. Links to all stories I've discussed can be found in the description below. So feel free to go and check them out. Let me know about this. Think of what you... got all the way to the end and fudged it. Let me know what you think about this video and tell me, would you try the elephant dung gin? Or have you tried anything that's kind of unusual in the food sense? Have you done the tequila with a worm in? Or if you go to... There's some countries you go and they have bottles of wine with like lizards and things in. Or the one with the toe challenge, with a human toe in the whiskey. Have you tried anything like that, and would you do it again? Answer in the comments, please, along with any thoughts you'd like to share. These are mine. They're not necessarily important. They're not necessarily right or wrong. They're just what was on my mind. So until next time, bye for now.